Good evening. My name is Bob Connors. It is 6 p.m. I'd like to call the June 4th meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission to order. John, can you read the remote open meeting law preamble and take a roll call of the members present?
Good evening. My name is Sean Young, opening the June 4th, 2024 open meeting.
Sean, I can barely hear you.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me now?
Better.
Better? Okay,
Yes.
I'll talk louder. Good evening. My name is Sean Young, opening the June 4th, 2024 open meeting. I am the conservation agent for the town of Newbury Conservation Commission. Please let me confirm that all members are present and can hear me. Conservation Commission members, would I call your name? Please respond in the affirmative. Bob Connors.
Yes.
Brad Duffin.
Present.
Diane O'Brien.
Yes.
Mary Rimmer.
Yes.
Mick Brown.
Yes.
TJ Conti.
DJ's
He's here.
just signing in. So.
Okay, he's here. And Woody Knight.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, I don't see Woody yet.
No Woody.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
just keep going, Sean, and hopefully he'll be able to join us.
Good evening. This June 4th, 2024 open meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely consistent with the act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which extends the governor's March 12th, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30, until March 31st, 2025. This order suspends the requirements of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location and allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with deliberations of the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video and or telephone conference, and the recording will be available on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Meeting materials were provided to the commission members prior to the meeting for review. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules, effective and clear conduct of our business, and ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. Proponents will be given 10 minutes to present. More time may be allowed to be at the discretion of the chair. After they conclude their remarks, we will go down the list of the commission members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, for all attendees except commission members and staff, please remember to mute your computer or phone when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to share screen your computer unless you have been allowed to do so. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any response, please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. If the commission members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself when you wish to speak. There will be an opportunity for public comment and questions during the public meeting after the commission members have spoken. We will afford the public an opportunity to comment or ask questions as follows. Yeah, we can turn to the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Sean. All right, team, upcoming meeting dates, June 18th and July 2nd. We have meeting minutes review for October 3rd, 2023 and May 21st, 2024. I'll take these separately. The October 3rd meeting, this is kind of some administrative cleanup between agents. There was a gap. The meeting minutes were approved, but they never got posted, and there's been an issue trying to locate them. So we have 4 or 5 of these that we've been working on. So why don't we take a look at the October 3rd meeting minutes? Okay, and the only ones present for that meeting were Bob Connors, Diane O'Brien, Mick Brown, and TJ Conti.
Hmm.
So any questions on the meeting minutes?
Nope.
No questions from me, Bob.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to accept the October 3rd meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, roll call, all in favor? Diane,
Yes.
Mick,
Aye.
TJ,
Aye.
and Bob Connors votes yes. Okay, the next meeting minutes are May 21st, 2024. Why don't we take a moment to review those? And everybody was present on those.
Mhm.
Okay. Mary, did you have a question?
I did, but now I'm trying to find the minutes. Just lost them. Hang on 1 second. Minute drafts, I guess that's what it is. 5:21. Okay. Just under the Sunset Club. I think it was. Sorry. Okay. Yep. 1113 Sunset Club. It just the third bullet item I think should be deleted. No impact from previous gas station. We haven't determined that yet, so just suggest that we take that out.
Okay, actually, as I recall, Matt had mentioned that that had been closed out from DEP and there was no outstanding issues on that. Mick,
Mhm.
you had asked the question, as I recall.
Yes.
Well, DEP
Yes, I did.
This would have been a first certificate of compliance, so I'm not sure why.
Well, we had a general discussion of what was outstanding, as I recall.
Mhm. And
And
Matt had said he didn't think there was an impact beyond what the previous gas station impact was. I think
you're not
determined.
talking about the actual gas station tanks and all of that stuff.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I had just asked if there was any open DEP files. Usually there can be with, service stations or gas stations. So,
I see. That's what
Yeah.
the question was. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's where it came in there.
mhm.
Mr. Chair, motion to approve is amended. Delete.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Roll call, Mary,
Yes.
TJ,
Aye.
Woody, Brad, Mick,
Aye.
Brad, Brad Duffin, can you hear me?
Hmm.
Okay.
Looks like we
Yeah.
lost.
All right, Diane
Yes.
and Bob Connors votes yes. Okay, first
I'll just
order
keep
of,
that as 4.
yeah, we have Mary, TJ, Mick, Diane, and Bob Connors. Brad and Woody, the only two that we can't confirm because we have lost Mr. Duffin temporarily, hopefully.
He'll be back.
Okay, first matter, certificate of compliance, DEP file number 0501344, 14 Plum Island Boulevard. This is the Sunset Club. This, we had a site visit team, and just a quick recap. I think at least my take is that the applicant needs to file a new order of conditions to cover the expired order and the remaining work, and then make a case for whatever deviations that they presented. From my perspective, it's what the stormwater calcs come back at with what they've done. The planting schedule versus, my feeling is there can be no net reduction in the proposed planting. I don't disagree with the location that they didn't put them in along the fence. That they probably wouldn't survive, but. And then the completion of the berm on the corner of Old Point and Plum Island Turnpike. But I guess we'll wait for the applicant to come back in with what they're thinking. But anyone else want to add any comments where as a result of a site inspection?
It's just the question of whether or not we want to issue an enforcement order directing them to file a notice of intent for the activities that have been done outside of the approval process.
Yeah, I mean, it comes out the same if that's how we want to approach this. Maybe that's the first step to keep this thing moving forward and get resolution.
That's what I'm thinking, is that they can know what it is that we want to have them file for.
Okay.
I
Okay.
also think it may be a cleaner way for them to do work currently on the site. As of right now, since the order's expired, they're not supposed to be doing work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see them. I think to Mary's point, and Mary, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, issuing an enforcement order, directing them to file a notice of intent on how they're going to accomplish the work not completed, and the remaining work that hasn't been performed.
Well, it's more of an issue of the work that has been performed and is either not correct or wasn't
Deviate.
part of the original approval.
Well, Mary, do you have any wording you want to propose?
Well, I think that we maybe have to draft it,
Okay.
perhaps outside of a meeting, because there are a number of items that we'll have to address, and then maybe at the next meeting it can be presented
Okay.
for vote, if that makes sense for people, and that way we can maybe Sean can run it past the applicant and make sure that makes sense to them.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't we continue this matter? Diane, do you have a question on this?
Wasn't there some talk that somebody was going to be doing a plan that showed what was supposed to be done and what was done, and it was going to be an overlay thing, so it would make it easier to see I'm just thinking if we're going to be drafting something, that's nothing we would be waiting for, right?
Yeah, I was able to look at the landscape plan and the 11x17s that they provided at the meeting.
Yeah.
Compare that with my photos and notes from the meeting, and so I think we know pretty much where things happened that weren't approved.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's just a matter of listing each one of them and whether or not they want to take them out or file a notice of intent for getting them approved.
Well, there's work they didn't complete
Right.
that will need to be completed, but they can't do that without a new notice of intent.
Right.
So, I mean, I think the simple wording on an enforcement order would be that the applicant to file a notice of intent addressing incomplete work and deviations from the expired order. And that's pretty much what it would be, wouldn't it?
To me, that seems right.
Okay. Yeah,
Brad's
Brad, I see you. I see you up there, Brad.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think there's three issues. One is that there needs to be an enforcement order that one notes that they did not complete that they're out of compliance with their proposed plan. Number two is needs to show they need to file a notice of intent that shows what they're going to do to fix the things that they have, and which would include the items that they've already installed as a notice of intent. And then the third issue is they have new things that they want to add. So I think it's a three-pronged process that they need to go through.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
But we can't
Yeah,
compel the new things as part of an enforcement order.
No, we can't.
Yep.
We absolutely can't, but the enforcement order brings the things that they did back to what they originally said that they were going to do, and the things that they didn't do, they need to do to
Right.
get a certificate of compliance first, right?
they have really three issues. They have an expired order of conditions
Exactly.
they need to address. They have work that's on their recorded order of conditions that need to be completed but cannot be without a new notice. And there's deviations from the plan that need to be addressed.
Correct.
I don't think we're here to give them counsel on how they should come back. I think
Agreed.
their they need to file a notice of intent with what they're going to do to correct and remediate.
Do we want to
deviate.
provide a date for them to do that? By,
Yeah, I think it's more of a friendly enforcement order. I'm just kind of thinking out loud that we should, let's put this on the agenda, I think, but in a general sense, are we in agreement that we have an expired order of conditions that needs to be addressed pursuant probably to a filing of a new notice of intent? That there's work that was not completed in the expired order that needs to be addressed in the new notice of intent. And same with the deviations. Some of the deviations that may be minor and some may be considered, more significant. But I think Mary, to your point is, let's put this on the agenda, Sean, at the next meeting. What's that, the 21st? And
18th,
on the
June
18th,
18th.
excuse me. And why don't you get in touch with the applicant and let them know what we're going to be addressing. We'd like to have them on the call on the 18th. That sound like a plan, team?
Or Mr. Chair, should we be issuing the enforcement order now so that at least, as Mary said, we give them a time limit to come back to us with what their plan is to how to correct those things?
Yeah, I mean, at the site visit, they made it clear that they're going to come in with a new notice of intent. To what extent, I think my thought is they should be addressing the deficiencies, they should be addressing the work deviation, and they should not be addressing new proposed work because there's no certainty that that will be approved regardless.
Correct.
Okay, Mick, you've got your hand raised. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, just I wasn't sorry I wasn't able to attend the site meeting, but I do kind of feel that issuing an enforcement order sooner than later gets them on a path, right? And we set a date, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, to refile. And I would think that enforcement order would include a stop work basically until they submit their notice, right? That be standard language in a notice, or excuse me, an enforcement order.
Yeah, I mean,
it's open to the public. I don't know how they, sort of shutting down the property. I don't know how we would enforce a no work order in a certain.
Mine was no more site improvements, like no
Yes.
more plantings, fences, buildings, things of that nature until it's defined in an order of conditions.
It may be the simplest thing to do is we issue an enforcement order where that the applicant is to appear before the board on June 18th with a plan, with the understanding they're going to require a notice of intent. And that gets them here on June 18th. And I think that's really the issue. And, no additional site work is to take place at this time. I think that if we're in agreement on that, then I think that's what the course of action we should probably take.
I think it's reasonable and it puts them on a set path with a timeline.
So Mary, are you okay with that? We're going to issue an
Yeah,
enforcement
that's
order?
fine. You can amend the order at the next meeting to establish
exactly.
different timeframes if you want to. So that's fine. I think that it's, there are significant enough deviations from an order of conditions. We have to sort of make it
Get the
clear.
ball,
You
get
know,
the ball rolling.
yeah,
Okay, Diane, what are your thoughts? Any phraseology you would like to incorporate?
No, I mean, not at this point. I think next meeting, it can be discussed more what they intend to do and what their timeline, like what a workable timeline would be for them since they are open. But I think they're closed Mondays, Tuesdays. So, next meeting seems like it can get nailed down more specifically.
Okay, TJ, what are your thoughts?
I think that's a great idea. The
Okay,
enforcement
Brett.
order to do that. It's great.
Okay, Brett, any other thoughts on your part?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so Sean, what I'm suggesting is we're going to issue an enforcement order. One, no additional site work is to be undertaken. Two, the applicant needs to come before the commission on the June 18th meeting with a plan of action to address the expired order of conditions, the deviation from the order of conditions, and the proposed work that was included in the expired order of conditions. And I think until we get them in here to set a timeline other than getting them here on the 18th, it is probably premature just knowing that it could take 30 to 45 days. We're heading summer. I think big thing, as long as no work's going on, that's the big thing. But does that make any
Did we know they weren't coming today?
we just left it on the agenda. What I'm doing with Sean is that any open item on enforcement orders just stay on the agenda so that we don't lose sight of them. And
Okay, so they weren't expected really to be.
yeah, I mean they could have been here, but they weren't required to be here, I guess. Okay, so all right, team. Do we want to ratify that enforcement order as mentioned? Is there a motion to ratify the enforcement order?
So moved.
Do we have a
Second.
second? Okay, roll call, all in favor? Mary?
yes.
Brad?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
TJ?
Aye.
Diane?
Yes.
And Bob Connors votes yes. Okay, so Sean, just go over the wording. I think you get a good sense of what we're looking for there. More of a notice to attend and establish a plan of action on next steps to get back into compliance. Okay, next order of business, the certificate of compliance for DEP file number 050-1243 131 Scotland Road, Newbury Golf Center. Eric, good evening. We are awaiting. We have a communication from Joe Soraka. He is reviewing the as-built to the approved plans, and he's in the process of that review. He's going to provide a review letter upon completion of that review. We have not received that letter, so there's no action going to be taken tonight.
Okay.
Okay, so it's in process.
Okay.
Joe's going to check the boxes, Eric, and the same thing. We will then take appropriate action upon.
Okay, you received the letter from my engineer?
Yeah, he has all that,
Okay,
and he's just doing his final review.
so maybe 2 weeks, maybe longer?
We're just going to leave this on the agenda, and it's going to carry forward, Eric. You know what you could do? You could probably check with Sean
Okay,
prior to the next meeting, if there's gonna be any action taken on this, or it's just gonna be, continued.
okay, all right.
All right, so
Thank
Sean,
you.
just leave this on the agenda, again, where it's a certificate of compliance, it's not a public hearing. Doesn't require a motion to, put it on to the next meeting. All right, next order is a certificate of compliance, DEP file number 0501131. 59 Plum Island Turnpike. No work has been started, is the request for the certificate of compliance. And driving by it, there is no work.
Yeah, so they have Bob Grasso's here actually about this project. From my understanding is that they have an NOI, I think it's expired too, but they have not touched the site. And Bob Grasso wants to close this order of conditions out so he can submit a new NOI with new proposed work.
Okay, Bob, why don't you
Sure.
give us your name, address, and what
Sure. My name,
you're
for
asking
the
the
record,
commission.
my name is Bob Grassel from Engineering Land Services. I'm representing John Hartnett at 59 Plum Island Turnpike. The order conditions were issued in July of 2013. They were never recorded or work was never started. So he wants to start the process of a new project on the site. We filed a notice of intent, I believe, last week, and we're on for the 18th, the next meeting. So we're filing a Form 8A to close out the old NOI so we can file for a new DEP number.
All right, thank you, Bob. Questions? Mary, any questions for Bob on this one?
No, I looked at it, and the only thing I noticed is that they're continuing to mow the part of the marsh that was delineated on that plan, but it looks like that was a pre-existing condition, so
Yeah, we'll address that.
address that in the notice of intent, but yes,
Yeah.
otherwise it looks good.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. Brad, any questions on this one?
No issues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mick, any questions on this one?
What's up, Bob? Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
TJ, any questions on this matter?
No further questions.
Diane, any questions?
No.
Okay, I have no questions. Sean, do you have any follow-up on this one? Okay. I will entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 59 Plum Island Turnpike. No work has been started.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, roll call, all in favor? Mary,
Yes,
TJ,
Aye.
Brad,
Aye.
Mick, Diane,
Yes.
and Bob Connors votes yes. Okay, thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, next matter, enforcement order 105, Northern Boulevard, unpermitted yard work. Team, this was continued for 60 days. And that puts it, what's that? I think you had it down for what?
July
July
16th.
16th.
Okay. You know what I'm doing? I'm just leaving enforcement order on the agenda for a quick review. So no further action is required on this one tonight. All right, we have no RDAs. Geez, that's Sean, what's going on? We haven't had any RDAs at this meeting. We've been inundated with those in the past. Okay, public hearing, municipal separate storm sewer system, MS4 regulation updates. Sean, can you provide an overview and a recommendation on this matter? Or is there someone presenting this? I see Renee, are you presenting on this matter?
I'm here, I'm working on behalf of the town, so I think it's up to Sean if you would like me to kind of walk you through the changes, or if Sean wants to introduce them.
You know this better than I do.
Okay.
Okay,
Good evening,
Renee, just identify yourself and your role.
Renee Bordeaux with Geosyntec Consultants in our offices in South Hamilton, Massachusetts. So we've been working with the town to help implement the NIPD's municipal separate storm sewer permit. for the past couple of years. It was brought to our attention by EPA that the town had failed to implement the ordinance requirements early on in the permitting stage. And so this was brought to their attention this permit year, which runs from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. We reviewed the regulations and did determine that EPA's findings were correct. And so over the past couple of months, the town has been working to go through and identify the locations in the town's ordinances that need to be updated to ensure they're in compliance with the NIPD's permit. We've done this with site plan and subdivision regulations, and now we're going through to the Conservation Commission to update some of those rules and regulations to make them consistent. Would you like me to share my screen and go through the major changes to the regulations for everyone?
I think that'd be very helpful, Renee.
Everyone see my document? I'll try to blow it up here a little bit. So. Are we good?
Yes.
Okay.
I can see it.
So on page 1, under the purpose of the applicability of the regulations, prior to this, it simply referred to the Massachusetts DEP Stormwater Handbook. We've updated that language to include reference to the NIPD's MS4 permit issued by EPA. So again, that, you know, what we're hoping for is Mass DEP is working on an update to the Stormwater Handbook, and that update should be consistent with the NIPD's MS4 permit so that there aren't two sets of regulations that differ from each other. So moving forward, you know, if you ever amend these again, you may just need to refer to one, but right now we'll keep it in just for knowing that in the future, the Stormwater Handbook will be consistent with the NIPD's permit. Scrolling down, I'm sorry, I'm going to scroll a little bit here, but to the next red line. I feel like it's slower when you're sharing your screen. Okay. Under part 3, which is the construction site erosion and sediment control plan, under section 1, the standards in B, we just added a reference, which is required in the MS4 permit, that the SWIP be developed in accordance with the EPA's construction general permit. So that's the language you see added there. And additionally, in that section, we added some additional minimum erosion sediment control requirements that need to be included on the plans and projects. And these are outlined here, essentially minimizing the amount of disturbed area and protecting natural resources, site stabilization when projects are complete, protecting slopes on the construction site, protection of all storm drain inlets and armoring of all newly constructed inlets, the use of perimeter controls, stabilized construction site entrances and exits, controlling waste that may be discharged, including, you know, building materials, concrete, washout areas, just regular litter and debris waste, and then ensuring to inspect all stormwater controls at consistent intervals. We did leave the additional requirements that were in there because they didn't conflict with the other ones. But we did want to make sure that we added those new requirements again, so it was consistent with the NIPD. Under section 4, the stormwater management plan, under standards 1, again, we referred to making sure that we're not only looking at the DEP stormwater handbook, but also referring to the NIPD's MS4 permit. Also under that section, prior, the water quality treatment requirement relied on the first inch of runoff, which is consistent with the Massachusetts stormwater standards. That is inconsistent with the NIPD's MS4 permit. So we removed that language and indicated that it need to be consistent with part 4.3D, which we'll talk about in just a moment, which is the new sort of water quality criteria for two different developments, new development and redevelopment. Number 3, the post-development stormwater criteria. At a minimum, it says all projects shall comply with, and previously it was the performance standards of the Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook. But we wanted to remove that because we're really outlining the specific criteria it needs to follow in order to meet the MS4 permit. So if we scroll down here. So under the water quality section, so some of the requirements that are still in the MS4 handbook were clearly outlined in here already, including channel protection as well as extreme flood protection. So we left those in. Really, the major changes are to the water quality volume. Previously, that was calculated as 1 inch of runoff. The way that the NIPD's permit is defining it, is they define a definition for new development, which is any construction activity or land alter resulting in a total disturbance equal to or greater than 1 acre. The key thing here is that, you know, for applicants who come in who have a larger plan for a development, they can't just come in with one piece and permit that one piece. You really need to look at the whole picture, even if they're only going to be doing a small piece. So they can't fall under that 1 acre if they're splitting it up. And essentially what this water quality requirement focuses on is on more associated with ensuring percent removal. So it's focusing on 90% removal of total suspended solids and 60% of the annual total load of total phosphorus related to the total post-construction impervious surface area on the site. Additionally, there's some requirements that installed BMPs, they need to demonstrate how they're meeting those requirements so that, you know, that they provide calculations that are consistent with the MS4 permit and tools that EPA is providing so that, you know, third-party reviewers and or the commission can show that they are meeting the requirements of that 90 and 60%. And then essentially a requirement, they retain the volume of runoff equivalent to or greater than 1 inch multiplied by the total impervious cover. So we aren't entirely losing the 1 inch, but in some cases, the 1 inch alone doesn't get us those 90 and 60% removal. So EPA is really focusing on ensuring that applicants are demonstrating that any controls they're putting on site do meet those water quality criteria of TSS and total phosphorus. Additionally, it's meeting a combination of retention and treatment that achieves the above standards. And if permitted by the town, it has the sole discretion to utilize offsite mitigation that meets the above standards. So if an applicant comes in and says that they want a waiver, this allows the town to say, well, you know, if you can't meet it on site, then you guys would have the authority to make the applicant find an offsite location to demonstrate that they can meet those water quality requirements elsewhere. And that's totally up to the commission if they decide they want to exercise that or not. The next one is for redevelopment. It provides a definition of what redevelopment is. So it's defined as development, rehabilitation, expansion, construction, improvement of impervious surfaces, demolition or phased project resulting in total disturbed acreage or greater than 1 acre that does not meet the definition of new development. For these, the requirements are a little bit less. So you'll notice here that in the new development, it was 90% TSS and 60% total phosphorus. In the redevelopment, it's 80% total suspended solids and 50% total phosphorus. And again, the requirements below that are essentially the same as prior to, which allow, you know, demonstrating the calculations that need to be provided to meet those standards, retaining 1 inch. Actually, it's retaining 0.8 inches on site for the total post-construction impervious area. And and then for redevelopment activities, you know, that are exclusively limited, it kind of gives an exemption to this. So, you know, for redevelopment activities, they're exclusively limited to maintenance and improvement of existing roadways, widening, adding shoulders. They shall improve existing conditions unless infeasible or exempt from requirements through A above. So road widening and other improvements to decrease the amount of impervious area on the redevelopment site greater than a single lane width shall meet the requirements above. So, you know, some of those projects where it's just kind of a, you know, you're going to go and mill and repave and not really change conditions or add impervious cover, you can be exempt from those. But if those that are going to add impervious cover would need to meet those requirements. Are there any questions on those? Those are probably the most substantive changes in the ordinance.
Yeah, I think the two questions I have on exemptions on stormwater on these updates. What impacts are residential ones still exempt from stormwater?
Yep.
Okay, and what about agriculture and farming operation?
At best, DEP doesn't have a requirement per se on what types of properties are exempt. I think they're really focused on that 1 acre. I would say most residential properties fall under that 1 acre, but I know most towns and communities may have a specific instances in their ordinance where they say single family residential is exempt entirely. And I think if agriculture and such is exempt entirely, I don't think if they're proposing more than 1 acre, I don't think EPA has an exemption for a certain type of land use. Kind of where I'm going with that.
Even if it's residential? Seems like it's specifically exempt residential one lot and up to 4 lots.
Yes, that's how it was previously. Yeah.
And that is remaining.
Yeah, and so I have to double check just to confirm that, Mary. I don't want to state that and then be wrong, but I know most communities in their ordinance have that in there as a special provision. It's not written in EPA saying that, you know, you have to exempt these types of land uses, but I know most communities add that in. And so I think, but I know there's other communities that for large, you know, residential properties that add a lot of impervious cover, they do want them to fall into that, right? If you have people building extremely large properties with tons of impervious cover, some of them are making them required. But I can double check that, Mary, and get back to you.
Yeah, and Renee, on the farming operations, I mean, is a simple planting of a field, which could be 5 acres, now going to fall under stormwater management?
I think if they're not doing impervious cover, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, so impervious is going to be the trigger.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, because it's also clearing of vegetation, like if you're going to clear a piece of land. So it's the activity as well. I think that's the way it works.
Yeah, I think we're going to have some clarification on impacts to, you know, normal farming operations, being that we're primarily an agricultural community.
Yeah, I mean, so the definition of new development, you know, it says is defined as any construction activity or land alteration resulting in total earth disturbance equal to or greater than 1 acre on an area that has not previously been developed to include impervious cover. And all of these water quality requirements are based on the calculation of impervious area.
Okay.
So like the 90 and 60 is all based on pollutant load from impervious cover.
Okay. Questions, Mary, any other questions while we go through all the members, and then Renee, you can continue on. Mary, any other questions you have for Renee at this time? TJ, any questions?
I did have some, sorry, I was muted.
I'm sorry, Mary.
Yeah, I'm sorry. A couple quick things. I'm going to have to hop off shortly on this call, but when you put in these criteria, is this the minimum necessary to retain compliance with the permit? Okay, so there's not any additional items that aren't specifically required as part of this.
They are not at the moment. I would say that EPA is in the process of issuing a new draft MS4 permit for the Massachusetts communities, which is expected at the end of this year. And there may potentially be additional requirements in the regulations that would need to be incorporated by the town and in the future to meet those requirements. But currently, all we have added is the very minimum that's required by the NIPDES. This doesn't go above and beyond.
Right. That's what it read to me to be as well. And then, you know, just for background for the rest of the members who may not, this may be coming out of left field for them because we haven't had any applications under the stormwater bylaw since I've been involved. That most of the time, the DEP stormwater regulations are going to kick in for a project that is large enough to trigger these stormwater regs. And so my understanding is in that case, then the DEP stormwater regs, if they comply with those, then they automatically comply under this provision. Is that correct? I mean, that's the way it works in a lot of towns where there's not a separate application process if your notice of intent covers the whole area. And I think it says that at the beginning of this. If your notice of intent and your stormwater management that's submitted to you covers the entire area to be altered and it complies with the DEP stormwater regs, then it would then comply with this bylaw as well. If the project doesn't have wetlands nearby, then you would have a separate application just under the stormwater bylaw.
Yeah,
that's
so
my understanding.
Yeah, so the only caveat to that is most communities have updated their rules and regulations, and those are more stringent now currently than the Mass DEP standards. So when you submit an application, for instance, if you don't have wetlands on site, you still need to demonstrate in a stormwater report that you're meeting the Mass DEP standards. Then you also need to demonstrate that you're meeting the town's local ordinance rules and regulations as well.
Okay. Okay, and then this also talks about an application. Is there an application form that's with these regulations? It talks about making an, the applicant fills out the application and submits a fee, but there isn't any fee schedule or application form that's attached to this. Is that something that you develop or we have to develop on our own, or how would somebody make an application? Because I don't think that anybody has done that yet.
Okay, I wasn't aware there wasn't an application. So
No.
I think if there hasn't been a lot of permitting, yeah, we could make an application that's consistent with this, that would go along with this stormwater bylaw. If
I'm
it's-
not aware of one, but
Okay.
perhaps it exists under the original bylaw. I'm
Okay, yep.
not aware of that.
Anything else, Mary?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. TJ, any questions for Renee on the, lot to process here?
A lot to process, especially being one of the people, Mary, this is one of my first times dealing with this, but
Mhm.
under new development, what is the criteria? I know it's 1 acre, but it can be part of a larger group. What triggers being part of a larger group? Is it one owner, one permit, a group of people? Is there a time limit as to when increments can be
Yeah,
put
so
in?
Mary, were you gonna say something?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so typically, it could be a large parcel, like, and I think the most common ones that you might refer to is like a commercial development, like a large sort of big box development, have an extremely large parcel, you're going to zoning and merging lots. And so if they come in for a single parcel to develop that single parcel, you really want to understand what's the plan overall, where is parking going to be, where are other buildings going to be, even though it may be a phased development approach. I would say the same may apply to a large subdivision, right? Where maybe, they want to put the road in, but they don't want to build all the houses at once. You want to really understand from the commission perspective where the total impacts are going to be, even though if we're only going to build, a handful of homes, 6 to 10 homes at the start and then do more later. So that's kind of what we're talking about. A common plan is really that, you don't want to just look at a small portion, like one piece of a larger common development. And so typically when you see something like that, you just need to typically ask applicants, what the plan is for the overall site long-term.
Okay,
Okay, anything else, TJ?
no, that's it.
Okay, Brad, any
No.
questions?
Yeah, just to follow on to TJ's question, Renee. So would that include adjacent sites? Because we've seen, not necessarily in this community, but in other communities, that a developer starts out with a parcel, does the development, and then continues the development into a subsequently acquired parcel that then is a separate application, but that it's really one big project.
Yeah, I would say that that's probably not going to be feasible, right? Because at the time of the application, that developer probably doesn't own that adjacent parcel. So I would think it'd be at the time, it would be sort of whatever that property owner owns, and really, I could see that, I live in Newburyport, I'm right down the dam from Newbury, so I'm very familiar with kind of what goes on. But yeah, that's really hard to police. I know that
It
does
is.
sometimes,
Right.
but I don't think there's a way to enforce that, kind of say like, are you interested in buying that parcel next door in 10 years or 5 years or 2 years, whatever. And
So
maybe-
Renee, excuse me, so that then just says, would we be allowed to ask the question that, or put a restriction that this is the only development, that this development cannot connect to a future development?
I don't think we can do that.
I don't think you
Yeah,
can. I mean, that's really.
I don't think you can either, but I'm asking the question.
No,
Because this seems somewhat restrictive for a developer, especially with the amount of impervious that they're allowed to develop with. So
Yeah,
I just see some developers that are not on the up and up would try and skirt this, doing it incrementally, right?
And I
Still maintaining compliance with the written regulation, but not necessarily with the spirit of the regulation.
yeah, I think the key here is sort of with these larger common developments, what we want to we want to catch is if they're coming in and doing a small portion of it and designing a stormwater management system that can only treat the impervious cover from that area. And then they come back and say, well, geez, there's no more space left and I have all this development, so we can't meet the criteria. That's really what you want to prevent early on, to make sure that they're saving adequate space to manage the stormwater runoff from the larger development.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the development down at the old golf course in
Yep.
Newburyport, right?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly the problem that they have.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Brad. Mick, any questions at this time for Renee?
Oh, I think mine were along the same lines of Brad and TJ, where a developer gets permitted for a property of 3 or 4 acres. What's to prohibit them from adding on 0.9 acres and 0.9 acres to that subdivision, after the fact? And I think my question's answered, but that was my concern too, that we have this 1 acre limit. There are developers out there that will say, well, I just added on 0.9 acres as a separate, but it's still contingent with that same cul-de-sac or something like that. So, but it's, kind of the same thought process, but it's not like we really have built into this.
Okay, thank you, Mick. Diane, what are your thoughts on this matter? Any questions for
No.
Renee?
No, I'm one of the ones that's coming out of left field, so I don't have a problem with the regulation updates, but I would need to review the rules and the regulations in more depth if and when an application that involves these issues comes up in the future. So.
Yep.
I'm
I
good
mean,
for now.
I think the perfect example of what everyone's been hinting around, I own a 20-acre site that has 1,200 feet of existing frontage on a roadway, and I have 5 Form A lots that are an acre or less, but I have 19 acres of undeveloped land out back that I've left access to. That's what we're trying to avoid, is bifurcating. It seems the goal is to take the locus of the potential development into consideration at the forefront of the approval process, then piecemeal and ending up shorthanded at the end.
Correct.
Yeah, and Bob, for that development, you'd probably have to run a road right up to tie in those other lots.
Well, being a developer, Renee, myself, you would leave one lot that you wouldn't build on that would become your road access.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking like a developer on this, which is, I guess, dangerous from time to time. But okay, well, Renee, why don't you, Mary? Any other thoughts on your part before Renee continues?
No, I mean, I apologize, I have to hop off, but I think this is, well done, and I don't have any real comments on, the changes that are proposed. I just think we need to educate ourselves a little more on what the structure is in the town that would alert us to these projects that we might not see otherwise. So we're only getting notice of intents for projects that have wetland, that are within 100 feet of wetlands or in a resource area. So we would need to talk maybe internally with the building department or whoever it is, so that we can make sure that we capture these projects so that they do end up being directed to us. Most of the time, I think these are going to be larger projects and they're probably going to require planning board review as well. So
Sure.
There's that aspect of it. And also a lot, larger projects, complex projects, we can always have outside peer review of stormwater under the DEP regs and under this as well, because it is often more than what the local boards can handle on their own.
So this is going to be a 2-step process. It's going to be adopting the regs, and then we're going to have to update the bylaw.
That's correct.
As step 2. So
Yeah.
tonight, what's before us is just reviewing the regs and doing a Q&A on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary. I
right,
know
so
you did it.
I'm an I if you need it.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you. All right.
Thank you.
All right, Renee, why don't you continue?
Yeah, and then the final item is just an update to what's required on the record drawings or the as-built drawings that need to be provided from the applicant back to the town. So there were specific requirements in the NIPD's MS4 permit that knew that they, that they're required upon completion of construction and before release of the full performance guarantee. Prior, they had 2 years after completion of construction to submit. So we wanted to update that to ensure that they were getting those sooner. And then there's just specific requirements of what actually needs to be on the record drawings. So, we added additional things, which included that all on-site stormwater controls, both structural and non-structural, designed to manage the stormwater associated with the completed site, needed to be on there. And then just a reminder that, they needed to be stamped by a professional engineer. So that's, I think that's it. Yep. Let me go down just to confirm. I'm sure. Yep. So that's it.
Okay. So I think just writing down the questions was, what were the exemptions?
Yep.
Residential, ag, fee, schedule, application. Part of me is saying that we should probably get those answers before we continue this until we get those answers. And then again, we're going to have to update the bylaw. One quick question.
Yes.
There was a recent Supreme Court case, Sackett versus EPA, where the waters of the United States was redefined far more stringently. What impact has that had on stormwater and EPA's reach beyond the navigable waters of the United States? I was involved in the case. That's the only reason I asked it.
Yeah, so in the NIPD's MS4 permit, it really comes into play with sort of how we define an outfall. So, it's not so much in this rules and regulations from a stormwater perspective. It's not going to impact that very much. It's more so, where stormwater is discharged through a pipe from a site into, they always say, a water of the United States is how an outfall is defined. And so I feel like every administration, that definition changes. And so,
well, the Supreme Court changed that definition.
Yeah. So I guess, EPA, leaves their permits fairly vague and refers to, if a stormwater drainage discharges to the waters of the United States. So it's left vague in the permit, and it's really up to the towns and permittees to basically ensure that they're in compliance with that definition, and really it comes down to, I would say in the NIPD's permit, this one, it's their outfalls, right? Where are pipes discharging? And when it's determined an outfall is whether it discharges to the water of the United States or not. Does that answer your question, Bob?
Yeah, I think what's happened is that the nexus, the waters of the United States used to be, you could be 40 miles away from a navigable body of water, but intermittent stream could shed, particulate into a more seasonal stream and ultimately work its way into a navigable body of water. Under Sackett versus EPA, the court was very specific that it had to be directly connected to a navigable body of water, and not 12 miles away. Or it was an interesting case. But so I would say that my main concern is the devil's in the details. I'm always nervous when we are going to adopt a EPA regulation and MS4 regulation that is then going to be part of our regulation without knowing, because that can change at any time. And once we've submitted and committed to it, there's really no going back on that. So it kind of keeps it's plain vanilla right now. These are pretty minor changes. But so weren't the floodplain maps of FEMA. And, as we all know how those can change. So the big thing here is, what jurisdictional reach does EPA have under Sackett versus EPA on this stormwater management? And this request directly is one of my questions. Two, what exemptions, how do we handle exemptions? What I don't want to have is, I own parcel A and it's 3 acres, and TJ owns parcel B and it's 3 acres. I don't want to have a situation where that for me to develop parcel A, I have to do the potential stormwater calcs on an adjacent piece of property that I do not own. I just wanted, clarity is the most important part here for me.
Yeah, and I would say that you're talking about the off-site requirements, correct?
Right, yeah.
Well, I think, I think the town in the Conservation Commission should basically limit the development on the site in order to accommodate the stormwater management, right? So sometimes that's losing developable area, right? So you
Right.
may have to give up a parking area, or you may have to give up, a portion of a building to allow it to remain on site. I have seen where communities have allowed it to go off-site. A lot of times it happens on town-owned property. Or they may contribute to a bank, they may pay a fee into a mitigation bank that is then used in the future, again, to mitigate locations on town-owned property, or it's kind of similar like a wetland bank, right? A wetland mitigation bank where you've identified locations where you want to do a large, wetland mitigation project, but doing small little ones, for impacts doesn't make sense. So you pool all the money and then you pick a parcel and then you do a larger project that has a larger impact. But I think most communities shy away from that because, again, it's administratively challenging and you have to find projects and then you have to, the project may not be implemented for several years down the road. And then that developer is gone and to have ties to have them do construction. So I think just hold applicants accountable for doing the stormwater on the site is really what it should come down to.
So the 1 acre or greater requirement is coming out of the MS4, current MS4?
Yes.
Okay. Regardless of whether they're proposing 12,000 square feet of impervious surface on that acre.
No, it's really, the 1 acre so it's 1 acre of land disturbance, but it's really, most of the requirements are tied to impervious cover. So if they're not doing really any impervious cover, many of the requirements won't, like the TSS requirements and the water quality requirements, they won't have to do anything because they're not generating impervious cover.
Okay. So it's the 1 acre of disturbance with impervious cover is basically,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, yeah, so I think Renee, I think you hear, we're concerned about the exemptions, making sure we have clarity on those. Mary brought up a good point on fee schedule. I mean, is that something we establish and is something that we would include in the bylaw? And the application process, is it a simple letter request or is there a template that we should be considering?
I will note that EPA is requiring that the town pass this by June 30th. So I just think, just be aware that time is of the essence here as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a June 18th meeting.
Okay, perfect.
That we can continue this to.
Okay.
But I really want to, I'd really like to get an answer on Socket versus EPA and how jurisdiction, how does an acre of land in the middle of Newbury that's not near a navigable body of water fall under stormwater management and EPA jurisdiction based on Socket versus EPA?
Okay.
That the state certainly, but I mean, typically what happens here is whatever EPA does, state just does it and adds 5% more to it. That was the big outcry when Socket was defined. All it did was establish where federal jurisdiction stopped and local and state jurisdiction began, and eliminating an overlap. So, okay, any other questions, team?
No?
Nope.
Okay, so Renee, I think you've got the questions we've raised.
Yep.
Do any other members have a request for additional information or additional content to this MS4 regulation update?
No.
No.
Nope.
Okay, so there's no additional request, Renee, just the ones we mentioned.
Okay.
So is there a motion to continue this public hearing to our June 18th? Meeting?
So move.
Second. Okay, all those in favor, roll call. TJ,
Aye.
Brad,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
and Bob Connors vote yes. Renee, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Have a good night.
Okay. Okay, next matter is a continued public hearing on DEP file number 050 1424 18 Temple Boulevard West. The applicant has requested a continuance to the June 18th meeting. They've downsized this project team. Apparently, they've been talking to the neighbors, and they've reduced the overall size footprint of the proposed work. And they're going to come in on the June 18th meeting to present that. So I'll entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to June 18th at the applicant's request.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, roll call. TJ,
Aye.
Brad,
Aye.
Mick, Diane,
Yes.
and Bob Connors votes yes. All right, under administration, staff reports and updates. Team, I had sent out a draft letter that the town it's a recommendation for a grant to update our open space and recreation plan. And I sent that out to you. It was in the Dropbox, but I also sent it out to you directly yesterday. Again, it's more that we're in support of it. We actually do play a role in open space, and they're actually looking for conservation members who want to sit on that. I have volunteered myself, and so any questions on this? What I'd like to do is, it's a pretty standard template form.
We do have a representative from the Open Space Committee.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, I think it's Christina.
Christina, if you could just
you
give
here?
us your name and
Yeah.
address and
Sure. My name is Christina Hoffman. I live at 21 Marsh Avenue. And yes, I am on the Open Space Committee. And thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for sending out that letter, the letter that is supportive of the town going for grant money. We send it into one location, and there are two different pots of money that we would be in line to possibly receive, should they so grant it. And we also are really looking forward to working with the Conservation Commission on the open space and recreation plan update.
great. All right, team, any questions on this matter? Let me just go around. Mick, any questions on this? TJ, any questions on this?
No,
Well,
Nope.
so,
Diane? Great.
Yep, the letter looked good.
yeah,
Brad, any questions on this?
No, Mr. Chair, thanks for sending that out.
Okay, so what I would ask, team, is that there's a motion to authorize the chair to convert this draft letter on behalf of the commission and provide it to the town.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor of finalizing the letter dated June 5th on the Community One Stop for Growth, Commonwealth of Mass? Say aye.
Aye.
TJ? TJ?
Aye.
Diane?
Aye.
Mick?
aye,
Brad?
Aye.
And Bob Connors votes yes. Okay, thank you, Christina. I sent that out, so please let Kristen, it's good to go. It was draft form as of yesterday. Now it's got the blessing of the commission. So
Considered final. Thank you so much for your support. Appreciate it. Take
thank
care.
you. Okay, Sean, what's the update? Sean had an update, a status update on 27 Coleman Road. If you recall, that was a Newbury, Rowley, work was done, complaints, cross jurisdiction, DEP involvement. And so Sean, why don't you give us a quick overview on that? And Sean received a
Yes.
communication from his counterpart at Rowley, right?
Yep. So I was in contact with Brent, and he pretty much told me what's going on over there. 90% of the work is in Raleigh, maybe over 90% until it's figured out. The question that us agents had is whether the commissions would allow Raleigh to take over the entirety of this project because of the messiness of getting two towns involved on such a smaller amount of work that needs to be done on the Newbury side. The residents are in the Newbury side, but their properties are on Raleigh. So it's a complete mix of jurisdiction.
Okay. So you know what? It actually, the good thing is DEP is kind of quarterbacking this to a point. Oh, they're involved with oversight. It would be great if they would just take it over completely and keep us in the loop. My only concern is it's hard to waive our jurisdiction without actually knowing what we're waiving. If Rowley decides to handle this with an enforcement order, then it precludes Newbury residents from notice on work being proposed, remediation, and it kind of keeps Newbury residents in the dark. And that's probably my biggest concern. If Rowley requires a notice of intent incorporating all the work, I think once that plan came in, one plan should cover the work for both towns, but the jurisdiction might still need to be bifurcated. I just don't know how Raleigh can enforce an order of conditions on Newbury and a Newbury owned property. But that's just kind of my thoughts there. John, what do you think?
I think that based off of the amount of work that's being done in Newbury, that it would be easier just for them to concentrate on the Raleigh side.
Well, if they're not doing any work in Newbury, then they don't need our involvement. But if they're proposing some work, I think we just have to keep an open mind. And from my perspective, it's the notice to the neighbor.
So the notice of the neighbors, with an enforcement order, you don't have to notify the neighbors. So either way, it wouldn't, the neighbors wouldn't be notified. So we are doing a notice kind of here, letting everybody know what's going on in Raleigh.
But our commission could require an order. We could issue an enforcement order requiring an order of conditions with a restoration plan. And then that would loop in all of the, parties of interest within the 300 feet. That's how this kind of started. One neighbor was acting unilaterally, and then the next neighbor was getting impacted by it, and so on. But I'm going to stop there. Mick, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm thinking if you start to split, give jurisdiction to Raleigh in this case, you kind of set a precedence, right? And at what percentage of property? Is it 51%? Is it 90%? You set that precedence, I guess, so that you are kind of giving up your jurisdiction on land within our town. So
John, let everyone speak, and I'll come back to you.
And then I think my next thought or question is like, I would think there's no work occurring or impacting the portion of the land in Newbury, then they could file an RDA, which essentially would be negative, correct?
No, that's a good thought.
I think would be that to me would be the cleaner process. So now the work is defined in Raleigh's Conscom up to the Raleigh border, and there's no, if there's no work in Newbury, then we give it a negative determination.
I like that a lot, Nick. I think that's a good thought.
That way we still maintain control of, land within our town, and we don't set this precedence of like I said, 51% of the project is in Raleigh. So you let us do this last time. Now you have to let us do it again. Type of scenario. I just think at the very least, they file an RDA.
Well, and again, that's a public notice to abutters too, so that it's,
Mm.
okay. All right, Mick, Diane, what are your thoughts?
No, I mean, Sean, I understand what you were saying as far as the enforcement order not requiring notice anyways, but maybe like if the enforcement order required them to submit an NOI in Rowley, the person in Newbury that might be affected by that wouldn't be given notice at that point. So I like the idea of us being in the loop because it seemed, if I recall from this project, it was the runoff that was coming into the Newbury, so it was really affecting us. And although we would trust Rowley, to do right by everybody, I still like the idea that we would be in charge of what happens on Newbury property.
Thank you, Diane. Brad, what are your thoughts on this? You're on mute.
It's difficult for me to garner a intelligent opinion on this without even understanding what the project is. So I think it's incumbent, as both Diane and Mick said, that we get at least a bite at the apple, just because of we are responsible for anything that happens in Newbury. So whether or not we did a joint Rowley Newbury Conservation Commission's attendance at a presentation by this developer, or whether we give you the authority to contact the chairman of the Rowley Conservation Commission and work out exactly how this thing would happen. But I agree with Mick's assertion that we should never give up control of the effect that any development would have on land that is within our jurisdiction. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
DJ, your thoughts?
Yeah, I echo yours and the other three board members' opinion that I'm not trying to make this over cumbersome for you, Sean, but I think it's irresponsible if we don't at least have a look at the project and know exactly what it is and what we would be signing off on.
So, Sean, I think that the proper course of action is Rowley can certainly take the lead on this and pursue however they're going to address their this violation, whether it's an enforcement order, an NOI. And it would be wonderful if the Rowley Conservation required the entire scope to be on their plan, on their submittal. But Newbury is going to require an RDA to make a determination at some point whether there's work being done in Newbury that requires further review and a possible NOI, or a negative finding that it is it's so insignificant that we're not required. We'll just issue a negative finding. But I think if we would let Rowley know that whatever course of action they take, Newbury is going to require an RDA for any work that overlaps into the Newbury town line. That sound like a plan, team?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. And I think Sean, that keeps it pretty simple. An RDA just gives us a peek. I think it comes out the same way. Rowley is still going to do all the heavy lifting, but whatever that plan shows, it should include the entire scope of work. If it spills over to us, an RDA has to come before us. That gives our butters a notice, and then we can make a determination on how significant or insignificant.
Again, our RDAs don't require abutters notices.
Well, it requires a public notice. We have to post it.
Yes, public notice, yes.
Yeah. So, which is
Okay.
a notice. It's a notice to the public. So, all right, team. I
Now,
think
commission members, I did have some input on this. If you could make it tomorrow, they are having a site visit at 1 p.m. I believe that's all of Rowley Conservation, or most of Rowley Conservation Commission, including the two neighbors or the two abutters. It's at 1 p.m. tomorrow at 27 Coleman Road.
is there any plans? Is there any proposed plans or existing conditions and proposed remediation plans that have been done? Or are they still, that's still in the process?
They're still in the process. They're doing the site visit tomorrow.
Okay. John, I would simply suggest that the Newbury Commission is going to require an RDA from the applicants on any proposed work that is going to be within the borders of the town of Newbury.
Okay, I'll let the owners know.
Yep. And Mick, that was a great idea. I just think that keeps it clean. We get a peek at it. If it's insignificant, it's a negative. If not, we require them to do an NOI.
Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then.
Okay.
That's enough for you for the year.
All right.
Thank
It
you.
is now 7:20, team. Any final comments? Diane, any words of wisdom you want to add to the Newbury Conservation Commission Brain Trust?
Nope, not today.
Okay. TJ, any final thoughts?
Nope, well, good.
Mick, any thoughts, any comments?
No, I am good, Bob. Thank you.
Okay. Brad Duffin.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call. All in favor? TJ,
Aye.
Brad, Mick,
Aye.
Diane,
Aye.
Bob Connor. Thank you,
Aye.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Bob.
Good night, everyone.